Hi friends, and welcome to Folklore Diaries. Here, we share real-life horror stories and chilling legends from around the world. Some of them happen to our listeners, others have been passed down for years. So get comfortable but stay alert, because the next story might just keep you awake tonight. And if you like true horror stories, consider subscribing. Okay, let's begin. This story happened in Kanazawa, a quiet old city on the western coast of Japan. Kanazawa was famous for its samurai houses, its peaceful gardens, and its narrow stone streets that twisted like a maze. Tourists often visited in the daytime, but at night the streets became almost empty. Street lamps gave off only a weak yellow glow, and the shadows between wooden houses felt darker than they should. People who lived there were proud of their traditions, but they also whispered about old stories, legends, ghosts, spirits that walked when the night was deep. Most people laughed about those stories in the day, but when darkness fell, even the bravest hurried home. In this city lived a teenage girl named Aiko Tanaka. She was 16, a second-year high school student. Aiko was smart but quiet, the type who preferred drawing in her notebook instead of talking loudly with friends. She wore glasses, always carried a sketchbook, and often stayed late after school for art club. Aiko lived with her grandmother, Sachiko, and her younger brother, Kenta, who was only 10. Their parents worked in Tokyo, so most of the time it was just the three of them in a small traditional house with sliding paper doors and a little garden in the back. Her grandmother was kind but strict, and she often told Aiko, "Never walk home alone too late. Spirits wander when the night is quiet." Aiko usually smiled politely, but she didn't really believe in ghosts. At least, not yet. Her best friend was Rina Sato, a cheerful, outgoing girl who loved telling scary stories. Rina was the opposite of Aiko, loud, funny, and always surrounded by people. But Aiko liked her energy, and they spent most of their school days together. It was one evening in early autumn when the story truly began. The sun had set, and the air had a slight chill. The moon rose above the tiled rooftops, casting a pale light on the narrow streets. Aiko had stayed late at art club again, and by the time she left school, the streets were already empty. She adjusted the strap of her school bag and started walking quickly, her shoes tapping softly against the pavement. The houses around her looked quiet, too quiet. The leaves rustled in the wind, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once and then went silent. That was the night when Aiko first felt it, the strange, heavy sensation that someone was watching her. Next morning at Kanazawa High School, the classrooms buzzed with noise. Students were chatting before lessons began, some scrolling on their phones, others swapping stories about TV shows or celebrities. But Aiko noticed a strange excitement in the air. When she sat down at her desk, Rina leaned close with her usual mischievous smile. "Hey Aiko," she whispered, her voice filled with suspense. "Did you hear? Someone in the next district swore they saw her." Aiko blinked. "Saw who?" Rina grinned, clearly enjoying the attention. She lowered her voice so only Aiko could hear. "The Slit-Mouthed Woman." Aiko frowned. The name sounded familiar, like something she'd once overheard but never paid attention to. "That's just an old story, isn't it?" But Rina shook her head. "No, listen. A girl from another school said she was walking home when a woman wearing a mask followed her. The woman asked, 'Am I pretty?' The girl got so scared she ran, but when she looked back, the woman's mask was gone. Her mouth was cut from ear to ear. A shiver ran through Aiko despite herself. Around them, other students had turned to listen, some pretending not to care, but leaning closer anyway. One boy laughed nervously. "Come on, that's just a joke. Everyone wears masks these days. Maybe it was just a teacher or something." But Rina's eyes were wide. "No. They say if you answer her wrong, she kills you. If you say yes, she shows her mouth and asks again. If you still say yes, she cuts your mouth so you look like her." The classroom filled with nervous whispers. Some laughed, others looked pale. Aiko forced a smile. "It's just a legend. Ghost stories don't hurt anyone." Still, when she walked home that evening, her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Spirits wander when the night is quiet. That night, while Aiko helped her grandmother fold laundry, she finally asked. "Grandma, have you ever heard of the Slit-Mouthed Woman?" Her grandmother froze, the fabric still in her hands. Slowly, she set it down and looked at Aiko with serious eyes. "Who told you about her?" "Just Rina, at school," Aiko said carefully. Sachiko sighed. "When I was a girl, we were warned not to walk home alone after dark. They said a jealous woman's spirit, cut and betrayed, still walks the streets. She hides her face, but her rage never ends. It is not only a story, Aiko. It is a warning." Aiko tried to laugh it off, but she noticed her grandmother's hands were trembling slightly. Later that night, lying in bed, she couldn't sleep. The image returned again and again, a woman in a mask, standing in the shadows, whispering a single question. "Am I pretty?" The following week passed quietly, but Aiko couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her chest. Every night, when she walked home from school or art club, she felt the same thing, the sensation of eyes on her back. She tried to tell herself it was only her imagination, planted by Rina's dramatic story and her grandmother's warnings. Still, she found herself walking faster, clutching her bag tighter, and checking over her shoulder more often than before. One Thursday evening, the art club ended later than usual. The streets were almost empty, and the shops had already closed. A soft drizzle fell from the sky, making the cobblestones shine under the weak street lamps. Aiko pulled her umbrella open and hurried through the narrow alley that cut toward her neighborhood. The sound of her shoes splashing in shallow puddles echoed unnaturally loud. Then she froze. Ahead, at the mouth of the alley, stood a figure. A tall woman in a long beige coat. Her face was partly hidden by the umbrella she carried, but Aiko could clearly see the white surgical mask covering her mouth. Aiko's heart skipped. For a moment, she thought of turning back, but the woman began to walk toward her, slow and steady. As the gap closed, the woman tilted her head slightly, her eyes glinting in the dim light. Then, in a soft, almost playful voice, she asked, "Am I pretty?" Aiko froze. Her breath caught in her throat. The words sounded exactly like the legend. Her mind screamed, "It's just a person. Just a person. Don't panic." But her legs wouldn't move. The woman took another step closer, the tap of her shoes echoing sharply. "Am I pretty?" she asked again, more firmly this time. Aiko forced a shaky smile and nodded. "Why, yes." For a second, silence filled the alley. Then the woman's gloved hand rose slowly to her mask. She pulled it down. Aiko's eyes widened in horror. From ear to ear, the woman's mouth was carved open into a grotesque smile, the flesh ragged as if cut by a knife. Her teeth gleamed wet under the street lamp. "Even like this?" the woman whispered, her voice low and hungry. Aiko stumbled back, her umbrella slipping from her hands and crashing into a puddle. Every instinct told her to run. The woman stepped closer. "Even like this? Am I still pretty?" Aiko's throat was dry. She turned and ran, her footsteps splashing wildly against the wet stones. She didn't dare look back, but she swore she could hear another set of footsteps behind her, quickening to match her own. She burst out of the alley onto the main road, where the lights of a convenience store glowed. Gasping for breath, she dashed inside. The sliding door beeped open, and the sudden brightness made her eyes sting. The store clerk looked up in surprise. "Welcome, are you okay?" Aiko shook her head, trembling, but she didn't answer. She turned around quickly, scanning the street outside. The alley was empty. No sign of the woman. No sign of footsteps. Only the rain. But deep inside, Aiko knew what she had seen was real. And worse, she knew the woman wasn't finished with her yet. After that night, Aiko could not feel safe anywhere. At school, when she tried to focus on her classes, she sometimes noticed a faint reflection in the classroom window. A tall woman in a coat, standing just behind her shoulder. When she turned, there was no one. In the library, while flipping through her art books, she felt a sudden chill pass by, strong enough to rustle the pages. She looked up, and in the narrow aisle between shelves, she thought she saw a mask, white plain, floating for only a second before disappearing. Her friends began to notice her pale face and distracted eyes. "Hey, Aiko, you okay?" Rina asked one afternoon. Aiko hesitated. Should she tell her? If she said the words out loud, it would make everything more real. Finally, she forced a smile. I'm fine. Just tired. But Rina narrowed her eyes, unconvinced. At night, the haunting grew worse. She dreamed of the woman constantly. In her dreams, she would wake to find the woman sitting at the foot of her bed, mask still on, whispering the same terrible question. Am I pretty? When Aiko tried to scream, no sound came out. And when she tried to move, her body was frozen as if tied by invisible ropes. The woman would then lower her mask slowly, revealing the gaping, bloody smile. Even like this? Every morning, Aiko woke drenched in sweat, her throat dry as though she had been screaming all night. Her grandmother began to notice too. Aiko, she said one morning over miso soup. You have dark circles under your eyes. You must rest. Aiko lowered her gaze. I keep having nightmares. Sachiko studied her quietly, her wrinkled fingers tightening around her teacup. Is it her? The woman with the cut mouth. Aiko froze. She hadn't told her grandmother about the encounter. Not once. How did you know? She whispered. Sachiko's eyes turned sad. Because she once haunted me too. Aiko's blood turned cold. She stared at her grandmother in disbelief. You saw her? Sachiko nodded slowly. Long ago, when I was about your age. She follows those who answer her question. Once she chooses you, she will not leave easily. Aiko felt her chest tighten, as if the air had thickened. Then what do I do? How do I stop her? Her grandmother looked down at her hands, silent for a long moment. Finally, she said softly, There are tricks, but they don't always work. Some say if you answer her with a question, she becomes confused. Others say you can distract her with sweets or rice candy, because spirits crave offerings. But most of all, never, ever walk alone at night. Aiko wanted to believe that was enough. But in her heart, she knew the woman's smile would return. The question was not if, but when. That evening, as she closed her curtains and tried to sketch to calm herself, Aiko felt something brush against the glass. She turned sharply. Outside her window, on the second floor, stood the woman. Her mask glowed faintly in the moonlight. She was smiling behind it, and Aiko realized, not even her home was safe anymore. After seeing the woman at her window, Aiko's world collapsed into fear. She no longer felt safe even in daylight. The woman appeared in flashes, in a crowd, at the corner of her vision, or in mirrors when Aiko washed her face. Sometimes the masked figure just stood there silently watching. Other times, Aiko would hear her voice even when no one else was around. Am I pretty? At first, she thought she was losing her mind. But soon Rina noticed too. One afternoon, as they walked home together, Rina suddenly grabbed Aiko's arm. Aiko! Did you see her? Aiko froze. Who? The woman. By that lamppost. Rina's words caught in her throat. She turned pale. She was standing there, with a mask. Aiko's knees nearly buckled. It wasn't just her. Rina could see her too. That night, the haunting grew violent. Objects in Aiko's room shifted on their own. Her pencils rolled off the desk, sketchbooks fell open, pages torn as though by invisible hands. Her mirror fogged up though no heat was on, and when she wiped it clean, words appeared, traced by something unseen. Am I pretty? She screamed, knocking the mirror over. Her grandmother rushed in, but when Sachiko saw the broken glass, her face went pale. She picked up one shard carefully, whispering words Aiko had never heard. Grandma, she's not leaving me alone, Aiko sobbed. Sachiko looked at her with weary, haunted eyes. She is jealous of the young, of their beauty, their future. That is why she hunts girls like you. But Aiko shook her head violently. Why me? Why not someone else? Her grandmother hesitated, then admitted softly. Because you answered her. Once you speak to her, she marks you. The thought sent icy terror through Aiko. No matter where she went, the spirit would follow. And now, her curse was spreading. 2 days later, Rina didn't come to school. When Aiko visited her, she found her friend curled in bed, trembling. She came last night, Rina whispered, her voice shaking. I heard her outside my door, asking the question. I didn't answer. I just hid under the blanket. but I heard her breathing. She's after me too now, Aiko. Aiko's heart sank. Her nightmare was no longer hers alone. That evening, Aiko's mother called her from Tokyo, cheerful and unaware. She spoke about upcoming family visits, about the future. Aiko listened silently, gripping the phone tightly, her eyes darting around her dark room. Then, just as her mother's voice faded into static, another voice slipped through the line, cold and distorted, whispering into her ear. "Am I pretty?" Aiko dropped the phone, her whole body trembling. The slit-mouthed woman wasn't just haunting her nights anymore. She was breaking through every barrier, windows, mirrors, even phone calls. And Aiko knew the curse was tightening its grip. If she didn't find a way to stop it soon, it would consume not only her life, but everyone close to her. The air in Kanazawa had grown colder with the approach of winter. The streets were empty at night, the lamplight weak and flickering. Aiko's fear had hardened into determination. She could no longer run. She had to face the woman, or risk being consumed entirely. Her grandmother, Sachiko, prepared a small ritual. On the low wooden table in their living room, she placed offerings of rice candy, incense, and salt. She whispered prayers she had learned decades ago, chanting slowly so Aiko could memorize the rhythm. "You must stay calm," Sachiko instructed. "When she appears, do not scream. Do not panic. Answer her with a question if she asks, and offer the candy. It may confuse her, slow her down, but it will only work if you keep your courage." Aiko nodded, clutching her school bag like a shield. She hated the thought of facing the woman, but she hated being hunted even more. That night, she left the house under the pretense of going for a short walk. She carried a small plate of candy, incense, and salt in her bag. Every step through the alley made her pulse race. Then she saw her. The slit-mouthed woman stood at the end of the alley, mask in place, tall, silent. Her eyes glinted like black glass. The mist curled around her feet, and the soft drizzle reflected on her coat. "Am I pretty?" the woman whispered, her voice low, melodic, yet terrifying. Aiko swallowed and held out the plate of candy. "Why do you ask?" she said carefully, remembering her grandmother's instructions. The woman tilted her head, confused. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she lifted her mask slowly. The horrific slit ran from ear to ear, teeth glinting wet and sharp. "Yes, you are," Aiko added quickly, trying to sound calm. "But why do you need me to say it?" The woman froze. Then she stepped closer, reaching out for the candy. Aiko held it steady. Her hands shook, but she did not scream. The woman's fingers hovered over the candy, almost touching it, and then recoiled, hissing softly. She blinked, slowly backing away. The mist around her seemed to swirl, pulling her back toward the shadows of the alley. Aiko's chest heaved as adrenaline coursed through her. "Go away," she whispered fiercely. The woman froze for a heartbeat, then disappeared entirely into the fog, leaving only the faint smell of rain and iron behind. Aiko collapsed to the ground, clutching the candy and shaking. Her grandmother appeared silently behind her, kneeling beside her. "You did it," Sachiko said softly. "You stayed calm. You followed the rules. She cannot claim you tonight." Aiko nodded weakly. Relief and exhaustion washed over her, but deep inside, she felt the lingering shadow of fear. This victory felt real, but fragile. For the next few days, Aiko tried to convince herself that the nightmare was over. She returned to school, walked with Rina, and even laughed at a joke during art club. The streets of Kanazawa felt a little brighter, the shadows a little less threatening. Her grandmother Sachiko prepared more protective charms around the house, chanting quietly each evening. Aiko followed the instructions carefully, sprinkling salt in doorways and windowsills, offering candy to the spirits that might wander. But the relief was short-lived. One evening, as she was sketching in her room, she noticed a shadow stretching across the wall, thin, long, moving unnaturally. Her pen slipped, falling to the floor with a sharp click. Then she heard it, the soft, slow whisper she had dreaded. "Am I pretty?" Aiko froze. Her heart raced, but she stayed silent, refusing to answer. The voice came closer, echoing inside her own room. She glanced at the mirror and gasped. Reflected behind her, in perfect stillness, was the woman in the mask. But something was different, something horrifying. The slit in the woman's mouth seemed wider. Her eyes glinted with a dark hunger, and behind her, in the shadow, Aiko saw another figure, a girl who looked exactly like her. Her own reflection, or something pretending to be her, smiled back. And then the realization hit Aiko like ice. The curse, it marks more than just one person. It copies you, and the copy becomes the new vessel. Aiko stumbled back, but the reflection didn't move like her. It moved on its own. The woman in the mask whispered again. "Even like this, am I pretty?" Aiko screamed this time, but the sound was swallowed by the room. She reached for the salt, the candy, anything, but her copy emerged from the shadows. The woman's long fingers brushed her cheek, and in that instant, she felt a cold, sharp pain along her jaw. When she looked in the mirror again, she saw it clearly. Her own mouth had begun to split. The woman's curse was transferring, her fate entwined with the slit-mouthed woman forever. Outside, the city was quiet, the streets empty. But inside Aiko's room, the reflection smiled at her. And then the whisper came one last time. "Am I pretty?" The screen goes dark, leaving only the echo of that chilling question. Thank you for listening to tonight's story. If you enjoyed it, please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And remember, not every shadow is empty, and not every voice in the dark is in your head. Good night, and stay safe.